Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, well actually this morning I should say, just having my morning coffee here now. I'd like to talk about what I found to be the hardest part so far of being retired at a young age. And I think this probably goes without saying, a lot of people will probably guess it. It's the lack of feeling accomplished that you get through your job, like that progression, that carrot to chase, and it's trying to reframe your mind around what your new goals and new functions as a man are, or as a woman. Yeah. So what happened was I went out to lunch the other day with a buddy from work, who I used to work with, and he's bringing up stories about what's going on at work and the problems that they're having, and oh yeah, the plant tripped and things like that, and it just brings back memories, and immediately my mind starts going to, oh well, did they try this? Did they try that? Do you remember back in 2018 when this happened and we did this? Like immediately, it kind of sparks all those internal thoughts, and it's very hard for me to shut that stuff off in my mind. And you know it's very easy to forget the things that you didn't like about your job when you're intrigued and interested and feel like you can provide something. Like in that moment I felt like I still had a lot left to give. And specifically, like right now, if they're dealing with a lot of inexperienced workforce, it makes you feel kind of valued or wanted to be like, oh, I could step in and help. And I think that's natural for everybody to go through. Like you kind of feel like your job misses you, even though deep down that they don't, and the company just moves on without you. So yeah, that's been the hardest part of staying away so far. It hasn't been the money. It hasn't been even really the social aspect. I guess that's a small portion of it, but that hasn't been the biggest factor because I've been getting my fill of social interactions without work. But yeah, it's been the wanting to feel accomplished, wanting to feel needed by complete in the big picture, complete strangers, really. Like, yeah, your manager by name, and maybe your supervisors or your coworkers and stuff, but in the grand scheme of things, you all quit and go your separate ways, and you're not nobody to each other, but you're also not family, or not, you definitely don't have as meaningful of an impact on their lives as you do on, say, in my case, my kids and my wife. So yeah, it's reframing and trying to find that same purpose that's kind of scratches that itch at home. Because I've had a lot of purpose at home. I've been spending tons of time with my kids. I've been teaching them new things. We've been working on their baseball skills. I've been trying to get them into doing some little like yoga stuff and start just laying the groundwork for the people that they're going to hopefully become as they progress. My kids are still very, very young, so it's nothing too intense by any means. Even just trying to manage the house more efficiently. Like I'm looking into my spare bedroom there, and we've got a big box of donations ready to go out because we've been going through and streamlining everything in our house. And just trying to get rid of all the waste and declutter. And I'll probably do a video on that soon, on the benefits of decluttering, because man, I was a little bit skeptical, but now that we're well underway into the decluttering process, it's a game changer mentally. But yeah, like I say, I'll get into that in a later video. So I also got a conflicting feeling from this lunch, because while we were going over the old stories, and while I was going, man, I miss working, and I miss this, and I miss that, and I miss feeling kind of that sense of being needed. Also got news that a fellow worker, he didn't work the exact same job as me, a bit of a different process. If you're familiar with the oil and gas industry, there's quite a few steps for how the oil gets out of the ground, and how it gets processed, and how it gets to the upgrading and all that kind of stuff. And depending on which part of the process and what type of process you work in, you get exposed to different things. In my case, it was water treatment chemicals, breathing in a lot of like vapors from boiler feed water, things like that, because I was more in like the steam generation side of things for the most part. I did work in like diluent and things like that as well, but yeah, it was more water chemicals and lime dust that I was exposed to, whereas other people are exposed to like coke dust, and they come out looking like they work in a coal mine. They're covered head to toe in black dust, and they're eating their lunch, and they're not always the cleanest and all that. But yeah, so we had a close friend who's been re-diagnosed with cancer for a second time, and works in one of the dirtier parts of the job. And I'm not saying those two are, directly related. I'm not saying that that was the cause, because I don't know. That would be ignorant on my part to say. But nobody would argue that our job is healthy for us. Nobody would argue that shift work is healthy for you. Nobody would argue that the boiler feed water chemicals that I was breathing in daily would be healthy for me. So yeah, it is definitely sobering at the same time, and it's definitely a nice reminder and refresher of, why I kind of chose to get away when I did, and why it's not necessarily worth it for me to go back, at the expense of, my body, my personal health, the time, the quality time that I'll be able to spend with my kids later on in life potentially. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. That's the struggle that we've been having 6 months in. Is, like I say, is that needing to feel accomplished and needing a carrot to chase, and also finding that in my own life. And I'd be curious to know if you're somebody going through this as well, like if you've already stepped away from work or are thinking about it, and if you're getting some of that anxiety about, like, what are those personal, like, boxes that I'm going to be checking, that progression that I'm going to be getting. Please let me know how you cope with that and what your plan is, because for the time being, as I said, I'm trying to clean out my house. I'm trying to kind of focus on benefiting my kids as much as I can. I've been taking my workouts a little bit more seriously, so I've been trying to get some progression there that I was maybe just doing maintaining before while I was always busy working. I was just kind of like, okay, as long as I'm staying fairly healthy, that's good. Whereas now I'm, like, actually trying to push the pace a little bit and actually see, PRs for the first time in probably a decade, really. Because, like I say, you just need something to say, hey, I'm not standing still, because as we all know, if you're standing still, you're moving backwards. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on that. Is that an expected problem to be having? Did you have the same thing? Do you expect yourself to have the same thing? Let me know below, okay, guys? I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.